Hello, in this video I'm going to show you the basics of working with frames in Scribus. For the most part, everything you do in Scribus is going to be in the context of a frame. So you will see that we have several different kinds of frames that we refer to. We have text frames, we have image frames, we have something called a render frame, which is used for mathematical formula and also for music notation, any kind of specialized text. Those require a special program running underneath, which I don't have. So we won't be studying render frames in this tutorial, but they're there in case you have the opportunity or want to learn more about them. And then finally, we have shape frames, and we have a few different shapes, but the two primary ones are going to be polygons and other types of shapes. So let's look at um, how we create a frame. There are basically several different ways to create frames, but for now, let's just focus on the three um, easiest ways to create a frame. The first is to use the toolbar. So if you look up here at the top of your screen, you see the different toolbars. Now let's start by creating a new Scribus format to work with. Single page is fine. And you see we got our standard grid. Then what we do is we see up here we have different tools. So here, this very first one, insert text frame. The second one, insert image frame. Third one is the render that I talked about. The fourth is a table, which we'll talk about later. And this is a shape, and this last one is an insert polygon. And then there's also insert lines, but we won't talk about those for now. All right, so that's one way to insert. Another way to insert is go to the insert menu, and then you see the different types of things we can insert. And then the third easiest way to create a frame is to just type one of these letters. These are shortcuts. So anyway, those are the three ways. For me, the easiest is to just go to the insert menu and click on it. So I'm going to insert a text frame. And then what you see here is you have a box that is moving around. The X and Y coordinates are showing the base point of where I'm currently pointing. So you can use that to make a specific place on your grid where you want to insert your text box. So click on the mouse, left mouse, and pull and drag, and you will create your frame, which is a text box frame. Now I'm going to point something out. If you made a mistake, you can go to edit and do undo. So we can do undo, create, and we're back where we started. So I also want to show you when we do the insert, as I said, you see the XY coordinates that shows you the base point where the drawing starts. But once I hit that click button and start drawing, you notice the XY coordinates change to width and height. So that's letting me know how much what size my frame is going to be. In my case, inches, because that's what we set our preference to. Now, normally at this point, the next thing you would do would be to start filling in information or objects within your frame. In this case, since it's a text box, we would start putting in text. But we're going to get into that in more specific details later on. So in this lecture, I'm just going to teach you how to manipulate the frames. All right, so there's a couple of things that we can do here. If we right click on the frame, you'll have see pop up what's called the context menu, and this has got some basics in here that we'll discuss in detail later when we get into the specifics. One of these context menus are different for each type of object. The other thing is, if you remember from the previous lectures, we can press F2 to get properties, or again, we could use get to properties from the context menu, which is here. You see F2 properties. So I'm going to click on that, and the properties menu is going to come up. And if you remember, we played with this a little bit in the settings course when we set our defaults. So one of the things I want to show to you about the properties menu is we could set up a name here. I'm just going to leave it for text 2 for the demo. The other thing is we can change the XY coordinates, the height and width, and we'll talk about rotation separately by clicking up and down on these arrows. And you can see that the um, clicking on the arrows changes the unit. So here in this case, the unit is inches, so you see 1 inch, 2 inch, and so on. That's changing the position, and that's capable for all of these. The other thing you can do is hover the mouse over the in position here, and then use your mouse wheel to change it. Same thing happens. You get 1, 2, 3 here, 1, 2, 3. All right. So that's two different ways that you can change the positions and the width and dimension. The third thing, or another thing, is suppose you don't want to work on the unit. Suppose that you want to work on the 10th position here, the 2.3. Say you want to change the 3 to 2. Now, how do you do that? The way to do that is to hold down the shift key, and then you can click um, on the wheel, and you'll see the 2, 3, 4. That 10th digit is changing. Or if you want to um, do the hundredths position, then you do Shift and Alt, and you see the hundredths position is changing: 29, 28, 27, 26. All right. Now you can do this too with larger. For example, I want to change the 1 inch to 10 inches and do that just by holding down the control key. And now you've got 11 instead of 1. So we changed the tenths position. All right, and then finally, you also could do a hundredths position by putting down Control Alt, but I won't do that here because what's going to happen here is 100 inches is quite big, and it's going to destroy my image here. So let's go back to our previous number, which is 1 inch. All right, and so now we're back into our grid. So that's how you can play with what's called the spin wheel for moving the or changing the size of the object. Now the other thing you could do is rotation. Same thing, if you click in or hover your mouse over the rotation box and then scroll your mouse wheel, you'll see that the object is rotating. Or you could do the same thing with the arrow, up and down arrow. Now, one of the interesting things about the rotation is the base point determines what it rotates on. So if you see it was rotating on the left corner here, if I change the base point to the right and I do the rotation, you see now the base point is over here on the right corner. Or if I click in the center and do that, you'll see now the rotation is on the center of the object. So those are various different ways to do rotates. All right, two last things I'd like to point out. We can move the frame by changing the XY position, and we can resize the frame by changing the width and height. But lots of times we do this by sight. So another way to move the frame is simply to click on it and then drag. And then another way to resize is to click on one of the arrows, on one of the boxes at the corners or in the middle, and just like you're used to in other editing software, you can resize that way. And will proportionally resize depending on which box you pick, or if it's in the corner, it will proportionally resize, and if it's in the middle, then it will not proportionally resize. All right, that's basically it for frames. We'll discuss it more in detail when we get into the specific uses of frames.